I'm reading a book because I've written a book and other people have written books. And we have a book that is talking about how to write and publish your book. You have a story with you. It's something that you've been through, it's something that you experience in life, and you can always share it in a book. Now, this book was put together by 16 authors coming and sharing their stories. And we've got some wonderful stories inside here. Now, today, we have one of the authors come and join us. Her name is Sylvia Worsham, and she's written chapter 7 in the book. She's going to be here shortly and tell us about this experience, and not only the experience of writing this book, but also her writing journey and why she thinks that you have a story to share in a book. Now, let me not talk much because Sylvia has a lot to tell us. So, why don't you join me as we go together to meet our guest today at Now Tell Us, Sylvia. Here we go. Hi, Sylvia.
Hey, Anthony, how are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Wonderful, actually. It's a beautiful morning here in Austin, Texas. So I'm grateful to be here and alive. So blessed.
Wonderful. It's good to see you once again.
It's awesome to see you, actually. So I was so looking forward to speaking to you today and to your audience because I
Mhm.
think that there's so much to tell since the release of Write and Publish Your Book.
Yes, early this year we launched this book, and people received it quite well. And I love that you are part of it because you share a very wonderful story, which people should go and get to read at some point.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So there's so much to talk. I don't know actually where to start, but maybe I can ask you, what do you think the listener should first and foremost hear from you?
Honestly, I think everyone has a story to tell because
Mhm.
their life journey is so unique to them. But sometimes they think it's so unique just to them that they should not share their story. And that was my story. That was the beginning of chapter 7 for me. I had received a prompting to write a book and I shoved it down for 10 years. I told God, no, I don't have a story to tell. I'm not important. And how could I tell God no? Obviously, he knows way more than I do.
Yeah.
But somewhere in my mind, I had convinced myself that I didn't have a story to share. And since releasing my books and even this one, we've changed lives. And your story can change a life. It could mean the saving grace for them
Hmm.
and can encourage and people to step into their own light,
Mm.
into their own power, and I think
Yeah.
that's just it's wonderful to be able
Yeah.
to do that for someone else.
I love that when you say that you told God no. Now, you and I are people of faith, and we get encouraged by stories of those people that we read in the Bible. And I remember Moses saying, "No, I am not the right person that you should be sending," and he eventually ended up
I
going
know.
to.
I don't know why we do that.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, we look at ourselves, and God tells us that He has made us in His own likeness. So we have any possibility or the potential to do great things, but then we look down upon ourselves. I mean, we say, I'm not the person who's fit to deliver that. I'm not the person who you should send to Egypt to deliver your people. My story is not. I've been in the desert. I've been somewhere in the wilderness looking for sheep. So my story is not so.
I find it so interesting because there's so many parallels, like I think of Esther, for
Mhm.
example.
Mhm.
She was equipped. God had equipped her as queen to save his people,
Yeah.
and yet she tells God no too
Mhm.
initially, right? And then her cousin keeps persisting, like the message keeps coming through, and the prompting kept coming to me over
Mhm.
the last 10 years. And then
Mhm.
finally in 2020, it was like, no, no, no. Trust me, it's time. You need to write your book. People need to read your story. They need to be empowered, and your life will impact others. And I don't think people realize the power they have as human beings to impact another life. The
Mhm.
butterfly, like what they call the butterfly effect, right? That the flaps of the wings of a butterfly can affect change thousands and thousands of miles away. Your story can affect change to someone living in Greece.
Mhm.
Someone, I'm in Texas and you're in Greece, and it affected you. My story, you were drawn to my story for a reason.
Mhm.
And we ended up collaborating together on a book.
Yeah.
But you would have never done that had you not taken that initial step and acted on the prompting and on that courage and the belief that you can make change happen.
Yes, and all of us can make change happen. All of us have the potential, and all of us shouldn't be hiding that story that is us, that story that we've lived through, that story that we have experienced, and someone else could be looking upon that story being shared. So go ahead and share it. And this is to you who's listening. Go ahead and share your story. Write that
So,
book. Now, what?
you
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. I was going to ask what was your first book?
My first book was Journey to Me, Trust the
Mhm.
Wisdom of Change. And that was the book that he had prompted me back in 2010 to write, almost like the Hispanic version of Eat, Pray, and Love. You guys remember that wonderful story by Elizabeth Gilbert, who is portrayed by Julia Roberts in the very famous movie Eat, Pray, and Love. And as I was exiting the movie theater with like three girlfriends, I felt a prompting, write the Hispanic version of Eat, Pray, and Love. And it was interesting that that was the movie that I had just watched because the woman Julia Roberts portrays is currently going through a major spiritual transformation uh,
Mhm.
after a divorce. Right, she kind of goes through this identity crisis of like, who am I? How did I get here? And in essence, that's what Journey to Me kind of brings you to. It's bringing you through change of how change is an opportunity for you to shift the lens towards your divine soul's purpose. And if you follow the movie, it's basically what she's doing. Like, I am someone who was this way and then I lost my way, and now I'm where I'm supposed to be and where God envisioned me to be, right? Because she goes through this entire transformation throughout the whole year she's traveling. And Journey to Me is that transformation written through turning points. Like turning points, every chapter has a turning point, and it guides you through your, what's happening inside your mind, what's happening inside your soul, and how you can listen more to your inner wisdom, your inner voice. And in my case, that means God's voice. How do I
Mhm.
listen to Him more so that I can be guided into this person He envisioned me to be? And that's the journey of Journey to Me.
Mhm.
That's my first book.
How easy or how hard was it to put this book together that you had kept for 10 years?
I think really the hardest part was getting past my lack of belief. I think
Okay.
that was the very first step for me, is just believing that I could do it. And once I got past that hump, I was able to then, I'm a very disciplined person anyway, so I use my strengths to my advantage. I I designed it in a way that I booked it on my um I booked it on my calendar, right?
Mhm.
I set time aside and I just told myself I'm going to write for I'm going to set aside 2 hours every morning.
Mm.
And sometimes I didn't feel like 2 hours, but for the rest of the time, I kinda wrote, "I don't know what to write, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to write," and eventually the words started to come to me, right? It
Mm.
was creating the habit of writing every day, whether I felt like it or not, because that's what's going to take you from that belief to a written book,
Mm-hmm.
is the habit of writing every single day, and believing that what you have to say is going to make an impact, and really having the passion behind the project, right? So I would get up every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. I would put on a cup of coffee. I would meditate to clear my mind, and then the download started to come for the book. And I just started writing one day.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I wrote and the more I acted on God's promptings and I stayed obedient, the more He sent me messengers to show me the next steps. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really have to think too much through the project because I was staying silent and receiving the message from God of this is what you're going to do next. And this is who's going to help you do
Mm-hmm.
this next part.
Wow, that's good. So I should, I mean, or the person who's listening should decide just tomorrow to set aside the 10 minutes, 20 minutes. But then, even before they get there, I'm going back to something that you mentioned, which was your hardest part. Maybe we could help someone in maneuvering their way around this point. How
Sure.
do I believe in myself? How do I believe that I have a book? How do I just gather that courage to get started?
And it's really a loaded question if you think about it, because how many people are out there are so afraid to take that first step, right? All
Mhm,
of us have been there at one
mhm,
point or another in different areas of our life, right? But I went back to my purpose. Why was I doing this? If my purpose wasn't strong enough, then I built on that first to start moving in that direction. Because you think about why you do anything in life, right?
mhm,
What
mhm,
what keeps you going is the motivation and the purpose behind that action.
mhm,
And so I went back and I said, I have a lot to say, and I've had this book and it's time. And I just started to tell myself tell myself that over and over and over again until one day it just kind of propelled me forward to start acting, because what happens is fear is there to block you,
mhm,
right? It blocks you. And I talked about it in the chapter. I talked about how the reason why it was called The Tale of Two Wolves was because it was based on that Native American parable of the little boy who's sitting with his Native American grandfather, and the grandfather is kind of talking to him about the evil wolf and the good wolf,
mhm,
and how the evil wolf is pride and fear and anger and all these emotions that are really bad for us, right? And
mhm,
then there's the good wolf, the wolf that is all loving and blessed and grace and all these other aspects to us, right? And so the little boy goes, well, who wins? And the grandfather says, well, whoever you feed.
mhm,
And if you're constantly feeding your fear, and you know how you feed your fear as a person. I know
mhm,
I feed my fear by reading negative stuff on the media, for example, right? So if you know that and stay consistently like doing those things, you're going to feed that wolf and feed that fear, and it's going to keep you stuck. So one of the first things to do is to kind of take a inventory of how
mhm,
you're feeding that fear. How are you doing that every single day, and what can you do to stop that, interrupt that?
mhm,
And maybe change your habits around a little bit. And once you're free from that fear, and it doesn't really take that long, honestly, once you start doing it,
mhm,
then of course you analyze your purpose. Why am I doing this? So that as you go through the project, you don't stop somewhere in the middle of the project, because if your purpose isn't strong enough, you're going to just quit it somewhere in the middle if it gets too hard for you. And that's where you can continue pushing through it and saying, no, this matters to me because I have something very important to say to the world. And it's also a way for me to heal what's inside of me, right? And that's important to me, especially like in my case, I was a mom, a young, like my kids were young during the pandemic, and I was starting to get very, very anxious during the pandemic. And part of my purpose for writing it was to be able to help other people not be like that and not model this anxiety to their children, because there's several chapters where I dive into um, modeling stuff that later on I paid for as a human being, you know what I mean? So it was kind of to help parents out in a way. And so that was a very powerful reason for me because I love my kids and family is my top core value. So it
Mm-hmm.
was going to mean something to me, right? And my faith is very high in me as a value and integrity and authenticity. So all those values were what were driving that initial project forward.
Wonderful, wonderful. Fast forward to today. How many books have you written so far?
Let's see, I've Journey to Me, and then I had 4 collaborations, so
5 books.
5 books. And right now I'm can you believe it? I'm going to have a second edition to Journey. So I hired a publishing company here in Austin to help me do that.
Mm.
So I'm working on those edits after this interview.
Wow, that's good. And I love that you mentioned, and for someone who could be thinking, "Hey, I don't have material. I feel that I can't feel a whole book." And then you talk of the fact that you made your own book, your first book, and then you've had other collaborations where you don't have to write a full book to
No,
become
you
a
don't.
published author.
No, no, you can do okay. In fact, I would recommend kind of like dipping your toes in the water by doing these collaborations first and
Mm-hmm.
really getting a feel for how to put a book together because what is the term here in the United States? I was very vanilla when I did the first book. You know, you just it's your first go at it and you don't know much about the publishing world, whether to self-publish or not. And I made mistakes because I was new at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the more I collaborated with other authors that had done this a couple of times over, and now I started to understand what goes behind the scenes of launching and publishing a book, which is a whole different conversation. The first thing we got to do is get you encouraged to actually put it on paper first, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
then once you go through the project of actually writing the book, then you know it all starts coming together, believe it or not. I didn't think so, but here's one tip that I think would really help our listeners out. We as human beings always want to know the how right before we start a project. And let me just tell you this, forget about the how, because that's not your job. That's God's job. God's job is to figure out the how. Your job is to stay obedient and do the writing. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, and it's not about being perfect because believe it, I'm a recovering perfectionist, guys. So
Mm-hmm.
I know what it's like to want to do everything perfectly, especially if you're female, because that's we're motivated by perfection as
Mm-hmm.
females, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, let's just drop that altogether. Just start writing because you're going to have an editor anyways. You're going to have somebody editing it. Your job is to put it on paper.
Mm.
That's it. You
Yeah.
know, and the rest will come later because my organization of the book and the chapters and how they were written, that came way later.
Mm.
My initial start was just to put my life on paper and just pretend like you're talking to someone. As you're talking to that person, you're writing that down. That's
Mm.
basically the book. Because a
I,
lot of people get so flustered with, "Oh my gosh, I'm not a good writer." Well, do you speak to people every day? Do you converse with them? That's basically writing. It's just on paper. That's it. That's the only difference.
I love that. I love that. And that is something that actually helped me come up with my first book because and this is something that I could advise someone who's listening and is can't know or can't imagine who is going to read my book. I picked on a person and actually two individuals who happen to be my sons. So
Oh,
so as I'm writing my book, I'm addressing my son. I'm passing them stories that I have experienced in my life and a few lessons here and there. And after it's done, the book is done, people are like, whoa, this is a beautiful story. And I couldn't I wasn't expecting what I came to discover or what I came to experience after publishing my book. People embrace that book. If only they could know that it's my son I was talking to.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it really. but it took that whole fear away, didn't it?
Yeah,
When you
sure.
just envisioned, like, talking to somebody and then just putting it on paper.
Yeah.
Because that's the way I kinda guide my children. When they
Mm-hmm.
have writing assignments, my son, my 18-year-old now is in college, and he's like, "I don't know how to do this." And I'm like, "Okay, well, just start talking to me." And he's like, "Okay." And he starts talking to me, and I say, "Okay, now put that on paper."
Mm-hmm. You can just
And
one
and
person.
that's it. That's
Yeah.
basically the paper, you know? And then, of course, like I said, the details of it come later.
Mm-hmm.
The beginning part is just as you get downloads, and you will get them everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
At least it happened to me. I would go out in nature and I would spend time out there because that's how I connect to God, is walking in nature and through my writing. And so the more I did both of those things, the more I received the downloads from him on the direction of the book, because this was in essence his book. I just happened to be his messenger,
Mm.
right?
Wow, yes. So we are writing, we are passing a message, we are impacting the world as we are being used as vessels to pass that message. So we've got to be obedient. We don't have to look at our flaws and say, I am not that person that you should send. Now we've got to believe that we are here for a purpose. And those people who are coming behind you, those people who are going through a challenge that you've been through, could be looking up on you to pass that message, to encourage them to keep on going and find their path out of this forest that they are in.
Mhm.
So don't hesitate, don't feel shy, don't all kinds of the don'ts, the negatives. Just embrace your good part and keep moving. Yeah, the good.
The way I see it is, if he has faith in you,
Yeah.
I mean, the creator of all of the world
Mm,
has faith in you and knows your potential. I kind of was like, who was I to question him? You know? I mean, here's the perfect being basically having this belief and this love for me enough to propel me forward out of the darkness, because I was in a very dark place during, as we all were during the pandemic,
mhm,
and directly stepped into my own light and my own power. And I've been the happiest I've been since the publishing of Journey to Me. I mean, it released me from a ton of anger I had towards certain family members. And now I live that joyful life that I always envisioned of living, because it healed me primarily first, and then I was able to heal others through the writing of the book.
mm. And I love how you mention the feeling that you've got from writing that book. I mean, if you've never written a book, those of you who are listening or watching, then you don't know this feeling, and you better just purpose to write a book this year.
Yes, because it
Yeah.
could be
Hmm.
what you need to heal.
Yeah.
And if that's all it takes for you to heal, I don't know what's a bigger purpose out there than that. Because who doesn't want to live a much more joyful, happy, and peaceful life? I know we're all like, I do, I do, I do. And if this is your ticket for that, and it steps you into that path, why not, right? What do you have to lose?
Mm. You've nothing to lose. So if you are looking for ideas on how to get started, 16 authors have written this book and they share their stories. One of them being Sylvia, who is here with us here on this episode. And if you'd like, by the way, I heard from Sylvia, if you would want a signed copy of this book, she can send you one. And how do they find that? How do they go about that? Please tell us, Sylvia.
Oh, my webpage, Anthony.
Yeah.
So it's www.sylviaworsham.com.
Okay. www.sylviaworsham.com. And when you go to forward slash my hyphen books, you're going to get all her books there. And this book is amongst them. So you look for the books that you want to read, her books, And then you get to order this book from her website, sylviaworsham.com/my books. Wow, it's wonderful to have you here, Sylvia. I'm honored. I was honored working with you, putting this book together, and I'm honored to have you as a friend and a co-author.
It's been incredible, and I you and I had that connection when we first met, on Podmatch, and you reached out to me and said, "Hey, I wanna interview." I'm like, "Great, let's get on," and then I realized it's a live interview and it's being streamed live, and I'm like, "Okay, I got this." And we had that initial connection, and when we got off the line, um, there's very few people in life that you encounter where you have that connection you've never even met before, but you
Mhm.
feel like a bond almost like sisterly, brotherly love, you know?
Yeah.
And I love that because we're all interconnected. I mean, across the world, we're all connected through our souls and our light. And it's rare when I get to encounter people like you, Anthony, and it's not just it's such a pleasure and such a blessing for me. So it's been more than you know for me
Wow.
to be connected to you. And when you asked me to help you in the collaboration of write and publish your book, it was like a dream come true. So I appreciate, I'm very blessed to be here with all of you, especially you, Anthony. I was so excited to be on this interview with you this morning. It's gonna be the highlight of my day. So
Wow. I'm humbled. I'm really humbled by that. And thank you for coming, for having this discussion together, encouraging someone out there to just get started writing and publish their book. Now, there is something that you shared there, and to someone who doesn't know where to start, apart from just reading the book that we are encouraging you to go and get. Now, Sylvia have mentioned something of reaching out, seeing someone that you could do something together. So you may not have that book, and maybe you can reach out to Sylvia and tell her, "I have this story that I want to share with the world. How can I get it started?" If you can't fill a book with that story, then maybe Sylvia has another story that she can add to that book, and you together can come up with a beautiful book. So reach out, talk to some people out there, talk to Anthony, talk to anybody who that you see on that cover or on that in that book once you get to read it, if you like the way their story. And yes, get published, get a book out there if you haven't.
it's
Yes.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the way to do it.
So you don't have to be alone. You can always have some people to work along with. You can
It's
collaborate.
actually pretty fun to collaborate with
Yeah.
others because
Mhm.
I will tell you, I read every single story in Write and Publish Your Book, and I was so honored to be part of that group. Their stories all I could relate to each and every one of them, which is, you know, it was impressive.
Mhm.
The level of integrity and the level of passion in all the collaborators. I was truly touched by their stories and encouraged to keep going on my own path as an author, even being in that group. So even if you're a brand new author, this book is really instrumental because it gives you a very broad view of the author world
Mhm.
and all the issues that can arise as you're writing the book, and they give you such sound advice and strategy that they wish they had known as they were doing their own projects. So these are people that are laying it all out there for your benefit. And really it's not going to cost you much to buy the book, and you're going to gain thousands and thousands of dollars of knowledge that we had to spend as authors trying to find out for
Mhm.
ourselves. So purchase it. Believe me, you will gain so much insight. Jonas Saul is in it. He's a number one Amazon bestselling author. He went. I loved his chapter because when I read it, I felt like Oh my gosh, I feel for him. Jonas talked about how he sent over 250 letters to publishing houses, and all of them told him no. And they said that his book wasn't even worth anything, and he wouldn't stop. And then finally, he just made the decision to self publish. And guess what happened, guys? He hit number one status on Amazon, past like some of these major names, and now has a Hollywood deal. I mean, geez, if you're not inspired by that, I don't know who is. You wouldn't be, right? I mean, that's amazing. It's just amazing. And then you had the lawyer who was behind some of the biggest lawsuits out there in the United States. He wrote a chapter as well. And I mean, a lot of these authors really had so much to share in their journey. So I can't emphasize it enough. You'll gain so much just by purchasing and reading, and then letting that just absorb inside of you, and then telling yourself, if these guys can do it after everything they went through, why can't I?
Yeah, they are wonderful stories, and already people are inspired by your story. And it is good that you mentioned Jonas, so one of the highest ranking person in this book, because he's written. I mean, Jonas so writes day and
Like,
night. He's gonna be
what is
he.
it, like 34 books just in the Sarah Roberts series? I'm like, I think, or more. I don't know how many books there are, but I'm like, I'm amazed. I'm like, this guy just keeps like throwing them out there, and I'm like, go, you go, Jonas, you go. But I
Yeah,
mean, his story was really inspiring because you never would have guessed ever
yeah.
that he
Uh-huh.
was told no. It's like, I bet some of those publishers are like now like wanting to beat themselves up.
Uh-huh.
So
Well, yeah. So everybody, go get the book, and let me thank our viewers here. If you're there and you haven't commented, please comment with a question, with some feedback. I want to thank Mishka here. Mishka says Kalimera. That's Greek.
I was like, that's I can't
Hi,
pronounce that.
hi. How are you? Good morning. And she has been enjoying our podcast and our guest today. I told you, Sylvia, you've inspired someone because Miska says that she's gonna get this book.
That's
Yes,
awesome.
and
Good for
everybody
you.
else who's listening, don't wait for tomorrow. Don't wait for tomorrow. It may be too late. Just go today. Go hop on to Sylvia's website, sylviaworsham.com forward stroke my hyphen books forward dot com. I mean, and dot
Backslash.
com. Yeah, that's
Backslash.
backslash.
I think it's backslash.
Yeah,
I was
whatever.
like,
What backslash
or
forward
forward
slash
slash or backslash. I don't know.
whatever. I mean, as long
Something.
as they are on your website, they are home. They can always get to see your books. And actually, to make simple, I mean things simple, that link is in the description of the video you're listening or the audio that you're listening to. It's right there. Just click it and it's going to take you to Sylvia's website. Purchase the book and get to write your own soon.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. It's been wonderful having you here today. Thank you very much, Sylvia, for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank all your audience that was listening live. Thank you very much for listening and for making your beautiful comments. We are reading them. I'm able to see them, and I'm grateful that it impacted you and blessed you in some way.
Yeah, thank you. Even those who get to watch this as it's over, the recorded version, we thank you for taking your time and we encourage you to write your own book. Someone is waiting for you to learn from you, to get inspired by you. And yeah, we keep sharing their stories. I've been told by so many people that I need to write a book on my life's story. Mishka says so. Do it.
Okay. So do it.
Do it. Someone is
Decide
waiting for
today.
that. Yeah, this could be that sign that you need to get
Yes.
started on your book.
Yes.
So go ahead and do it, Mishka. Wow, thank you. We've come to the end of our show today, our episode today at Now Tell Us. And we are really grateful and we thank you once again. Please remember to subscribe to our channel and yeah, remember to follow us on social media and let's inspire the world together. Let's impact, let's spread some goodness out there. This is why we are here. And once again, thank you very much, Sylvia. Can you tell us a few words before we go that we should always remember? It's always our custom. Now tell us some words that you think that I should never forget.
You have a very bright light, beautiful light, and people need to see it. They need to experience you fully. And you have gifts inside of you that are only yours to share with humanity. And we are waiting for you to share them because you are beautiful and you are light. So thank you.
Yes, this goes out to you who's listening or watching. You're the light. Go ahead and shine. That's about it today at Now Tell Us. This has been your host, Anthony Morore, and together with our wonderful, beautiful, inspiring guest today, Sylvia Worsham, was saying bye for now. Until next time. Bye.